Hey there, how you going? This is my first video covering Svelte. Svelte is a new language to me and I'm learning it at the moment. So I've begun using it in my day-to-day work. So I'm going to use this channel to document and describe what I learned, what my challenges were, how I solved them, and hopefully I can help you too. I'm loving Svelte and I hope by creating some content, I can encourage others to pick it up and grow the language in popularity. I'm by no means a master programmer, so jump in, tell me if I'm doing something wrong, if I could improve something in the comments, and hopefully I'll learn a few things along the way as well. What I'll be covering today is the basics of components, what they are, what they're used for, and how to send data between parent through to child components, and then from the child back up to the parent again. So what components are is they're used to break up large files with repeatable bits of content in them. So if we have this here and there are distinct components that we go, these is the same thing repeating over and over and over again, we throw that in a component and then can just re-render that same component over and over again. The component sits as a child and everything that is in that component will get rendered and passed up to the parent component and then shown to the whole page. So let's have a look at how we can create a component. So I've just got some HTML here that is a list of basketball players who need to request some trades from their teams. So as you can see, it's the same thing repeated 3 times. So this is a great example of what would be good for a component. We'll make this card here a component and all of the things inside that go into that component. So we've got this whole slab of HTML. It's ugly, it's horrible, I hate it. So what we'll do is we'll create a component. So in our project, go to the lib folder and new component. So let's just call this card. Inside here, we can put one of the cards from there into here. And let's get rid of the other cards for the meantime. So what we need to do now, we need to tell this app.svelte component about this card.svelte component. So the way we do that is we import it. So that is telling this component about the card component. And what I want to do is I want to render the content inside this card component into this app component here. So the way we do that is it looks just like HTML, we go card and then save. And what that's going to do is it's going to render all of this HTML content here inside this little spot just here in my div. So if we have a look at that, we've now just got one card. And if we change, say, the name here, you'll see that is now changing through there. So that card component has been passed to the parent and rendering inside that parent. What we might like to do though is send some information from that parent app component down to its children components now. So we've got the card here and we may have a variable within that app component that we want to, when rendering and creating this card component, send some information to it so that it has some variables or some information available to it when that's being rendered. So the way we do that is through props, and it's super simple. All we need to do is declare the prop. So let's just go player name on the card equals Anthony Edwards. And then what we do, so that's us sending the information down into this card component. We need to receive this within the card now as well. So let's go create a script tag here. And the way we do that is with the export keyword. We go a let because we're going to be changing this on the way in. So we're going to be setting this value. And we just want the name that we set here to be the name of the variable here. You can set a default value just by going equals my name. So if nothing is passed, that will be the default value, but we're going to be passing some information to this, so we won't worry about that. And then this is now a variable in this component only that has the information that is being passed down to that card. So Right now we're calling it Mr. Basketball. So let's change that over to player name. And if we have a look back here, it's gone from Mr. Basketball back to Anthony Edwards. So to recap, we've just gone inside this card component. We've said, hey, there's going to be a variable inside that called player name equals, and then we get to send what that value will be down to the child. And inside here, I tell this child component, I'm going to receive this information with the export keyword, make it a let variable, so then it will be changeable on the way in. And we make sure that that player name lines up with what we've done here. That's now available as a variable that you can then use inside your HTML, which we're doing here. So what we'll do is we'll also pass through the file name for the image as well. So let's take that and go player image equals this here, and export let player image, and just drop this in here. And nothing should change, which means it's all working. So, but if we want to create more cards now, all we need to do is paste a new one. So I've got a parent component passing information down to a child component. So getting this info, passing it down to the child. But sometimes we need to, let's say when we click a button, dispatch that and tell the parent that something has happened on the child, and we need to trigger some functions or do something in the parent component now. So we've got the props on the way in and event dispatches for the way up. So the way that we do that is we first need to import the event dispatcher. We'll create a variable to hold the event dispatcher function in. We'll just call it dispatch. And then what we'll need to do is we'll need to have a function that will be running to send this dispatch function. So let's go call a on click equals a function. And then we'll have a dispatch function that we'll call, say, button clicked. So we need to know what we want to click. So what we're wanting here is when we click request trade, we want to send a message up to the parent component that the button was clicked. So let's attach to that request trade and on click that will run our function to dispatch the event. So here's that button here. So let's go on click equals, let's run this function here that we've got as a variable. So this variable is a function. We don't put the brackets here because that will call that function, and that will happen when you build the div content. So we don't want it called then. We want to just put the variable here, and this onClick function will then call it for us when it's clicked instead. So this onClick will call that function in the variable. And then we need to listen for that in our app Svelte component, the parent component. So let's just pop a new, and you'll see that it looks similar to the onClick. Instead of onClick, we want to go button clicked, which aligns with that there. So we are dispatching button clicked, and then we are listening for on that dispatched button click. And then what do we want to do? We want to call the function. So let's go post a message, and we'll need to create what that's called, const post a message equals a function. So now what will happen is when we click this button on click, it calls the function that's in the variable on click, which will dispatch a event called button clicked. to the parent. And then the parent, we're sitting here saying on, so it's going to wait for button clicked, and then it's going to run the function in the post a message variable console log. So that's the flow of what's happening. So if we're good, this will work. You clicked a button, so that's looking right. So now you can do that on each of the different components. So now we expect this to, as we click this on here, you clicked a button, and now we've got 2 and 3. So that's working for each time we click the button there. It's adding that up in the console. So that's how you do create components, the very, very basics of sending data from the parent down into the child component through props, and then also from within that child component, send the information up again to the parent component through event dispatching. This is the bare bones basic, just the absolute fundamental concepts of it. There's lots of shortcuts and ways that you can handle it so that it's able to pass more information through more readily. But I hope that helps out with the basics of components in Svelte.